Hello and welcome to Dangerous Risks 2024, Return to Normal Concerns, the 30th episode in our Crossing Thin Ice podcast series, brought to you by Actuarial Risk Management. My name is Max Rudolph, and as always, I'm joined by Dave Ingram. The Most Dangerous Risk Survey always has a few surprises for me, and the 2024 survey was no exception. As we move away from the furor of the pandemic, in 2023, we saw many extreme weather events and the rise of artificial intelligence as a topic at the dinner table. I always look for big moves in the survey, either up or down, and try to guess where it might go in the future. We hope the Crossing Thin Ice podcast series is helping you with your ERM program and risk knowledge. These offerings sometimes look at specific risks, but also consider practical aspects of risk management. By the way, nothing in today's podcast is intended to be investment advice. We are here to provide educational material on ERM topics without getting lost in the weeds. We hope that you will also take advantage of our complimentary quarterly newsletter and webcast on a variety of risk management topics. Let's get started exploring the 2024 Most Dangerous Risk Survey.
The 2024 Dangerous Risk Survey suggests that insurance industry concerns have shifted back to more traditional issues after several years of turmoil. Risks like inflation, ability to hire, and employee retention that were top concerns in the 2022 and 2023 surveys have receded. For 2024, the top risks are all things that we have seen over and over for many years. Cyber, profit, strategy, IT, and claims were the top 5. Ability to hire dropped from 8th to 25th place, and employee retention went from 5th to 27th place, suggesting that both risks have substantially abated. IT systems and technology gap went from 6th to 4th place, reversing last year's move and finishing back in the top 5 for the 6th time in the 7-year life of the poll. Let's talk about the top 5 risks. Number 1 was cybersecurity and cybercrime, up from number 2 last year and a top 5 risk in all 7 years of this survey. Insurers had a bad year in 2023 with several large life insurers with pension businesses hit by MOVEit file transfer cyber attacks and health insurers experiencing a significant number of ransomware attacks. Number 2 was pricing and product line profit, which is up from number 10 in 2023 and also a top 10 risk in all 7 years. Through mid-year 2023, aggregate insurance earnings have taken another step downwards after a significant drop in 2022. That probably explains the concern about profitability. Claims continues to surprise us, and rate increases have not been enough to counteract. Higher interest rates can help with earnings if insurers can hold on to customers in this environment. The number 3 risk was strategic direction and opportunities missed. This was up from number 9 last year. This was a top 5 risk pre-COVID in 2018 and 2019. Now that we have survived the pandemic, this risk has moved back into the top 5 because we are back to worrying about strategy again, rather than just survival. People are expecting that new strategies are needed, but no one is sure that the new strategies that they are undertaking are what the company needs. The number 4 risk is IT and systems and technology gap, up from number 6 in 2023. This risk has been in the top 6 for all 7 years of our survey. In 2023, the rise of artificial intelligence into public prominence has added to the gap that most insurers see between their own IT capabilities and that of the best in class of their competitors. Now, in addition to the cost and time constraints on resolving legacy issues, there's an immense talent knowledge shortfall of people who understand both AI and insurance. And rounding out the top 5 is runaway frequency or severity of claims, which was up from number 7 last year. Insurers have seen claims increase for both frequency and severity in both 2022 and 2023 in almost every line and almost every market. We cannot just point to a few mega storms. And though the inflation rate has abated in some markets, insurers are not sure that they have yet seen the full impact of inflation on claims that have already happened. Rounding out the top 10 are number 6, legislative and regulatory risk, number 7, natural catastrophe, number 8, emerging risks, number 9, reputation risk, and number 10, interest rate changes. This year, we trimmed quite a few risks off of the bottom quartile of last year's survey, going from a list of 80 possibilities down to 60. But we did add one new risk, artificial intelligence, which debuted at number 27. Rankings changed drastically for several other risks, like geographic concentration, that jumped from number 47 to number 11, terrorism, that jumped from number 72 to number 45, and property market commercial mortgage exposures rose from number 51 to number 28. Inflation, on the other hand, dropped from number 1 to number 19. Employee retention fell similarly from number 5 to number 27. And the age of employees and distributors dropped from number 25 to number 47. The prospects for our world in 2024, with wars and elections threatening to upend some long-standing regularities, do not seem to be pointing to a return to any sort of normal. We will be keeping our eyes out for the emergence of new risks from artificial intelligence and commercial real estate in the coming year. We suggest that risk managers should all be on the alert for new and unexpected emerging risks.
Are you challenged to meet your need for actuaries? Actuarial Risk Management can help. ARMS Data and Modeling Institute, or DMI, is a team of talented and experienced modeling actuaries working with an extensive bench of senior consultants. ARM will partner with you to shift all or part of your actuarial and modeling needs to the DMI at a significant cost savings without sacrificing integrity. Contact ARM today about how the DMI's modeling and valuation services can help position you and your company for tomorrow's challenges.
So Dave, what advice do you have for insurers looking to enhance their risk management strategies in the face of evolving threats?
Well, the survey this year seemed to show us evolving back to how things were before the pandemic. For a couple of years there, we had a couple of unusual items creeping into the top of the dangerous risk survey, but this year, the top of the survey are all things that we've seen before. There isn't that much in terms of evolving threats that seem at the top of people's mind. That actually brings up a different problem, I think. I saw a recent post on LinkedIn that said that many insurance ERM programs had become boring routines that nobody pays attention to. And I think that's linked to the results we saw in the survey, that the top risks are the same old things. And that points to a major challenge for risk managers. How can we keep people focused on what is important for us to accomplish in risk management while the risks are all just staying the same? It's not as much of a challenge when you have something new to get folks excited about, even if it's an uneasy excitement, not a happy excitement. There's a danger even then that attention will shift to the hottest new risk, and not enough attention would be paid to those same old risks. The most recent example of that, I think, is interest rate risk. Interest rates have been more volatile in the last 2 to 3 years than they've been for a generation. And we've seen examples of what comes about from poor management of that with the failure of Silicon Valley Bank, who ignored their interest rate mismatch risk. People have a really strong tendency just to pay attention to the newest problem. So it's a balancing act for us risk managers. One way to keep things fresh is to vary the questions that you ask each year. If you ask the same questions about the same risks every year, both the risk takers and the risk management folks will all put responding to those questions on autopilot. So you have to think of new questions every year, or at least have a rotating set of questions. It could be the same risk at or near the top of the environment. Things may be different enough in the environment that you're going to need to update risk mitigation strategies, but you'll only notice that if you pay attention to it and not just photocopy last year. Oh, photocopy. I'm giving away my age there. Copy and paste last year's response. So for that, you got to keep an eye on what everybody else is doing, and you may want to adopt some of the latest new approaches to mitigation for one risk or another, even an old risk that's been around for a long time. And you're going to find this is going to cause you a problem. It's going to run afoul of the usual push in business that we've all seen towards more and more and more efficiency, lower costs, the same output for less and less spending. Changes to your risk management approach will not be as efficient because you can't stay with the old tried and true. In risk management, there needs to be some change just to keep the folks focused on what needs to be done, but you also will need to make changes to react to changes in the environment that's coming from outside the company.
Yeah, I think that's some good advice. Looking at the same things every time, we do tend to get in a rut a little bit, and it's nice to kind of see something that's totally off the wall and see what other people are thinking about it and what their thoughts are. So back to the survey, we talk about a top five or a top 10, but not all of the 60 risks can be in those higher levels. What risks would you have given higher standing?
Just like last year, the one risk that I think could be higher is that of commercial mortgages and real estate related to office buildings. I've done a little bit more digging into that to try and replace my impressions with some facts about it. And what I did find that it's not a big risk on average to insurers. You know, even a large drop in the value of the commercial mortgage and real estate holdings for office buildings would not impair insurers. It certainly would be a problem for the companies that do have high exposure to that. Commercial mortgages and real estate represent a fairly small class of holdings for insurers on average, and real estate, office real estate is less than a quarter of that, again on average. But you got to watch out. There's likely to be more than a few companies that have highly concentrated positions in that sector, and so if you're one of those companies, I'm not sure what options you have in the short term because it's not a good time to lighten your exposure, but at least you can stop adding to it, which you probably have already. But you can expect to see losses in that area as mortgages reach the end of their term. Some places I've read said, that's going to start happening not this year, but next year and the following year. There'll be a big wave of refinancing of those securities, likely at higher rates, and that's going to be one of those tipping points that'll push a lot of buildings, a lot of properties into problems. Max, what would you add?
Yeah, my picks in the survey really don't do very well overall. I think I just don't think like other people, and part of it is because I'm not at a company, so I'm not dealing so much with the short time horizon that everybody at a company has to deal with. And so for this type of survey, I am out of sync a little bit. But my choice of a risk more important than shown in the survey results is climate. Probably not surprising to those who follow a lot of my work. We're already seeing many weather events that would have been far in the tail of a past distribution. Today we see, for example, a major heat wave in West Africa and heavy rainfall recently in the Philippines. Things that are way out in the tail and then unlikely to happen without climate change. These events have become so frequent that many of them don't even enter our news cycle, which is just showing how we're getting used to it, I suppose, which is a bad thing to happen. So Dave, while many of the top five choices have appeared on the list in the past four surveys and been consistent, there's one that's new and ranked number five, runaway frequency or severity of claims. Do you think this reflects the increasing weather events due to climate change, or is there more to it than that?
My quick answer is yes. But before I give a more detailed answer, it was the first time it was in the top five, but it's always been in the top 10. So it's a risk that has been considered to be moderately important. And I think the only reason it isn't in the top five is because we have a mixture of life and health and property and casualty folks responding to the survey, because P&C insurers have always been concerned about this risk. They have seen a number of risks suddenly make a change in either the frequency or the severity or both. Recent experience for property and casualty writers, particularly the property half of that, have seen more and more risk in areas that were some of the risks that they were holding to diversify, to smooth things out. Last year, there wasn't a big hurricane, but the property claims from convective storms made the total claims just as high in property as a hurricane year. That's not happened before, I don't think. You also had auto, which you saw a lot of headlines about the insurers that were pulling out of some markets and that were getting 25% or higher rate increases. Well, that's probably indicating that they had 25% or higher excess claims in the period before. So auto a decade ago was considered a cash cow for the industry. So now they're struggling to get the sometimes politically appointed insurance commissioners to approve very unpopular rate increases. Life insurers, in addition, saw some bump in claims from COVID, depending on exactly what kind of market you were in. It varied some. That should have been a wake-up call that there is a lot more risk and mortality than we've assumed over the long term, where it seemed like it's something that was fairly stable with an actually slight favorable trend. Health insurers were the interesting story on this one last year. They never saw an upturn in claims from COVID. That what was happening was, yes, there were a rush of people needing treatment in hospitals because of COVID, particularly in the first year of the pandemic before the vaccines were developed. During that time, there was a larger drop in claims for other reasons, that almost nobody got any elective surgeries, for instance, during that time. And the average insurance claim on the things that the treatments that didn't show up was a good bit higher than the average cost of a COVID claim. So there was an actual decrease in cost during COVID, and at least so far as we're winding our way out of COVID, there hasn't been a big tick in claims. Of you'd think that some of this would be people that would be coming back after the pandemic for some of these elective surgeries, and it just hasn't happened yet. Profit margins for health insurers were flat or maybe down just a tiny amount, 0.1%, 0.2%. So
That's a good segue into the next question, where the pandemic led employees to the Great Resignation, where workers reflected on what they wanted out of life, and many switched jobs or chose to work remotely from the location of their choosing. Both ability to hire and employee retention as choices fell quite a bit in this survey. Is this a risk we don't need to worry about anymore?
I think what we experienced there, we should take that as a foreshadowing of things to come. And I know you've recently had a research report published, Max, on demographic trends. We are now reaching the peak cohort of young folks. The numbers of people coming into the workforce will start dropping every year. College applications and admissions are going to start dropping real soon. The sort of thing that we saw during the pandemic, where there were too few candidates for some jobs, will continue to get worse. We in the insurance industry have always suffered from an image problem in this regard. Almost nobody grows up dreaming of working for an insurance company or working in actuarial science. So as the pool of young people shrinks, the insurance industry is going to have to pick up our game to attract new employees. AI may come to the rescue. Who knows? The threat that will automate some jobs may be a necessity for insurance. One of the stories that you hear about this issue in one of the bellwether places on this, Japan has had a shrinking population for a while, and they're one of the most highly automated countries in the world. So I think we'll see everybody reaching for that kind of solution. At least everybody in the developed countries where this is happening everywhere. And in my opinion, in addition, it would make a lot of sense if we rationalized our immigration policy somehow so that we have more people to fill all of the employment niches that we depend upon. Well, so Max, you mentioned you're leaning towards paying attention to climate risk. How would you say that climate change has influenced the way the way insurers perceive and manage risks?
Yeah, I think insurers in some places have been fighting against regulators to project future likelihood and severity of climate influenced events like wildfires and hurricanes, where they're different from historical results, and we're seeing progress in that regard. But other products besides homeowners insurance need to also, and I'll use a pretty famous quote, skate to where the puck is going to be, as Hall of Famer Wayne Gretzky used to say. For example, many life insurers use purely historical mortality data with some conservatism to price their products. There's lots of moving parts in mortality, and reinsurers have been researching this for years. A combination of higher temperatures, pollution, smoking, and obesity will impact mortality and morbidity with both positive and negative changes that also will interact with each other. As a risk manager, I find it extremely valuable to know what other risk managers are worried about. We've included a link to the full survey report in the show notes and hope you take a few minutes to review. You will likely have a different view than we do of what is interesting. Today's risk environment is very complex and interactive. Knowing the history will help to provide foresight of what may be coming. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Crossing Thin Ice, presented by Actuarial Risk Management. If you find it valuable, please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues.